Yo, what's up everybody and welcome to another NBA Blueprint. Before I jump into this, make sure you check out all my blueprints I'm dropping today and tomorrow. I'm going to definitely drop a bunch here in the next couple of days because I'm trying to get a lot done before the draft, which is in only a week. It's almost here. That's absolutely crazy. So the team we're going to be talking about in this blueprint today is the Utah Jazz. Last year was their first season without Gordon Hayward, who left for the Boston Celtics in free agency the summer before, and the Utah Jazz were expected to kind of fall off, but they didn't. Donovan Mitchell had a terrific rookie year after they traded up to the 13th pick to draft him in last year's NBA draft, and he definitely looks like a franchise piece going forward, and he could definitely be a better player than Gordon Hayward here, maybe even next year. And that was definitely a franchise-saving pick, as they were going to be in mediocrity without that top-notch scorer that they needed. They definitely need to surround Donovan Mitchell with a couple more scores because their defense is top-notch, but they would lose some games last year just because they wouldn't be able to score the ball at a high enough clip. They did end up making the second round where they bowed out to the Houston Rockets, and they were semi-competitive against the Rockets, but they did lose in 5 games. If they can keep growing their youth, and they can definitely add some talent this offseason, maybe they could compete against the likes of the Warriors and the Rockets because they definitely have the defense to do so. Jumping into the trade market, I don't expect the Utah Jazz to really make that many trades this summer. They definitely could lose Derek Favors to free agency, so they might look for a power forward on the free agent market, maybe a 3-and-D guy. Bringing back Marvin Williams could be an option. Maybe Al-Farouq Aminu, who's a little bit worse on offense, a little bit worse shooter, but can definitely defend at a very high level. Derek Favors is just a weird fit with Rudy Gobert, so they definitely need to find a more perimeter-oriented power forward to fit him. Other than that, they got a lot of, I wouldn't say mediocre because they have a lot of pretty solid wings, but they don't have really a all-star or potential superstar other than Donovan Mitchell, so I don't really expect them to add too much there. And they could definitely end up making a trade. It's just very hard to foresee, so I'm sorry, but I don't have more on this end for the Utah Jazz. They've been rumored to extend a promise to Kevin Huerter, but now it's the Los Angeles Lakers that have been rumored as extending him a promise, and they aren't a team to really extend promises to other players, so don't put too much stock into them getting rumored to be promising players. Last year, it was rumored that they promised DJ Wilson, who ended up going a few picks higher to the Milwaukee Bucks, and of course they traded up for Donovan Mitchell. They could definitely trade up again. They don't have a piece like Trey Lyles, which helped them trade up last year, but they do have their future picks. So maybe they could trade up for Lonnie Walker and Kevin Knox, and they could have a Donovan Mitchell type of rookie season and just explode out of absolutely nowhere. Who knows? But the Utah Jazz have done a pretty good job of drafting players to build their core, drafting players that aren't even in the lottery or in the very late lottery that play better than where they were drafted. Gobert is a good example. Donovan Mitchell's a good example. They got Joe Ingles as an undrafted free agent after a training camp with the Los Angeles Clippers, and they waived him, and that's been a terrific pickup. He's one of the best glue guys in the league. So if they can just make under the radar moves that end up being a lot better than anybody expected, then they should still be able to build their team from a youth standpoint in the draft with the 21st pick or a pick that they trade up for. As far as free agency goes, Utah is definitely not a destination. It's the Utah Jazz. They're a small market team, and they play in the middle of the mountain range, that is the Rocky Mountains. So don't expect a free agent to go there. Maybe a mid-level exception guy, a Wayne Ellington. I name him in almost every blueprint, but he's definitely the best guy that can be had for $5-6 million a year. Maybe a Mario Hezonja. Maybe that's a guy they feel like they can help bring his career back on track, but they have a decent amount of depth. The only position they're going to have trouble with is at power forward if they don't resign Derek Favors, which I think they shouldn't, which I think they won't. So maybe they could bring in a guy like an Ersan Ilyasova for the mid-level exception, who's a shooter, more perimeter-oriented, an okay defender, and would definitely be a better fit for the Utah Jazz than Derek Favors, in my opinion. Any power forward like that is somebody they should go after. So in my opinion, just to break this down and summarize this quickly. Maybe look to trade up if there's somebody they like in the late lottery or around 15 or 16, maybe a Zaire Smith type who could complement Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt going forward. They shouldn't re-sign Derek Favors. They should look to sign a more perimeter-oriented power forward to help better fit their team and to space the floor a little bit more for Donovan Mitchell to create. And they should continue trying to build their youth and build their core in the seasons ahead. As a small market team, that's the way you have to build, and Utah has definitely shown they are pretty good at building in that way. And hopefully after a couple of off seasons, maybe in 2020 when Chris Paul is getting old and the Warriors might end up breaking up, maybe the Utah Jazz can kind of slide their way in there as a contender, as a team that could potentially make the NBA Finals with a young Donovan Mitchell doing his 2006 Dwayne Wade impersonation. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of this NBA blueprint. Let me know what you guys think about the Utah Jazz, and especially Donovan Mitchell. How good will he be this year? I think the sky's the limit for him. I love him as a player. Reminds me of a young Damian Lillard as a Portland fan. You gotta respect that. Let me know what moves you guys think they should make, who they should draft at 21, who they should trade up for. Anything down in the comment sections below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this blueprint. I hope you have an amazing day as well. And I'm out of here. This has been Tori. Peace out.